Welcome back. And it's safe to say that the Florida Gators are kind of in their own predicament with Billy Napier that Texas A&M is in with Jimbo Fisher, or at least what they've have been over the last few years. Texas A&M fans have been wanting Jimbo to be gone from Texas A&M for a couple of years now, but because of the massive buyout at Texas A&M, if he were to be fired soon, it's kind of helped. It's kind of been the biggest reason why he stayed. And right now, Florida is in that situation with Napier, along with the recruiting as well. Jimbo Fisher has been great at recruiting at Texas A&M. Billy Napier has been great at recruiting at Florida. But when it comes to um, game day operations, when it comes to you know the week of leading into the game and the actual games itself, both head coaches have been underperforming. At least in Jimbo's case, he's been there longer at Texas A&M, so he has won a little bit more than Billy Napier. Beating Alabama as the number one ranked team in the nation in 2021, and having a few some eight nine win seasons. 2020 won the Orange Bowl. Billy Napier obviously does not have the length of time at Florida that Jimbo has had at Texas A&M. So the wins are kind of stacked in Fisher's favor. But these are quite frankly two of the same head coaches. You have one head coach who whose offense has not kept up with modern football, and has not been able to keep up well in modern football. And Napier, who's more of a modern day coach, yet his offense is not good either. And both of these guys are not good play callers, except the only difference is that Jimbo, at the very least, recognized it last year and finally hired an offensive coordinator in Bobby Petrino, who was the former two-time head coach at Louisville. And you kind of see and if you look at Texas A&M, their offense is a heck of a lot better than what it was a couple of years prior. So, at least with Jimbo, you can say he's made the effort to making a change. Napier has yet to do it, though it's rumored that he plans to do so. I already said in the previous video, any move that Napier makes from here on out, I no longer trust it. I no longer believe in this guy as a head coach. I'm done with Napier. And sadly for us Florida fans, whether we like to admit it or not, we're stuck with Billy Napier for at least 2 more seasons. And I'm going to read to you why. So this is an article written by Neil Schulman of In All Kinds of Weather of the All Kinds of Weather podcast. They cover Florida Gator Athletics, mainly the football team, of course. Here's how much Florida would have to pay Billy Napier if he's fired. Now, if you see the October 3rd, 2023 date, this was after the Kentucky game. As you can see highlighted in orange, of the 33-14 loss to Kentucky. But I'm not going to read that part because it's a month past. So I'm just going to stick to what the topic is, basically. Napier came to Florida in 2022 with an initial salary of $7.1 million. The salary is set to increase by $100,000 in each of the 7 years his contract runs through. So Napier's earning $7.2 million this year. Which is we're still in 2023, and the next year will be 7.3 million, and then so on. In total, the deal is worth it's a 7-year deal worth $51.8 million, so just underneath 52 million. If Napier's fired without cause, meaning he just didn't win enough games, as opposed to an off the field situation where he embarrasses the university, the way Mel Tucker did at Michigan State. If you know, you know. I already did a video covering that. Florida would be forced to pay him 85% of what remains on his contract. And, I'm not going to get into the whole semantics thing, but, if he's fired after 2023, his buyout would be $31.875 million. After 2024, which is highlighted in black here, after 2024, the buyout would be $25.67 million. And then after 2025, the buyout would be $19.38 million. So I think it's needless to say that Florida will most likely, at the earliest, probably fire him after 2025 if they were to choose to do so. If things continue to look as bleak as they do right now, I find it very doubtful. I quite frankly doubt that Billy Napier is going to last through 2027. I think he might last through 2024 and maybe 2025. 2026 is a little bit more of a stretch. 2027, I definitely don't see that happening. So it's safe to say that the NPR isn't going anywhere anytime soon. While it may be a frustrating reality for Florida Gators fans, the truth of the matter is that it's time to accept that Napier is going to get at least one more year and maybe more before a change of leadership is even considered, which I think he's absolutely right. But quite frankly, the way things look right now, he better not. if I was the universe part of the university, I would tell him straight up that you better hope that you don't do anything stupid off the field that can allow us to get out of this buyout because if you just look at what he's done at Florida, it's really not that much better than what Dan Mullen did his final year at Florida. So in 2021, this is per sportsreference.com and the college football database. This is the 2021 Florida Gators schedule and results. As you see, Dan Mullen 5-6 and Greg Knox 1-0. The Florida Gators were 6-7. This is the beginning of their string of losing records. 6-7 in 2021, 2-6 against the conference. Their only victories came against Tennessee and Vanderbilt. Dan Mullen was 5-6, and then one of their victories was almost a close loss, was Florida versus Stanford, where they won 70-52. It was um, it was almost as bad. I think Napier's performance against South Florida was worse if you're talking about the quality of playing time. At least you could say with Dan Mullen against Stanford, they put 70 points on an FCF school, which I know it's an FCF school, but how many college football programs nowadays put 70 points on a FCS school? So it is what it is. So here it is. They beat Florida Atlantic, South Florida, lost to Alabama, beat Tennessee, lost to Kentucky. That was the beginning of their 3-year losing streak to Kentucky. Beat Vanderbilt, lost to LSU, lost to Georgia, lost to South Carolina. They got blown out by South Carolina. Barely beat Stanford, barely lost to Missouri, barely beat a bad Florida State team, and then lost to UCF. If you look at this record, this track record right here, they were 2-6 in conference play. They were 3-6 in Power 5 play this year because of the Florida State. UCF wasn't a Power 5 football team yet. Uh, Florida State at the end because they're an ACC school. If you go back to 2020, the way the final 2020 season ended for Florida, they lost their final 3 games against LSU, SEC title game against Alabama, and then got blown out by Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. So Florida, up to this point, was 3-9 against Power 5 football teams, and they were 2-8. Dan Mullen was 2-8 in his final 10 games in conference play. He was 3-9 in his final 12 games in Power 5 excuse me, I'm getting messed up here. He was 2-8 in his final 10 games in conference play. He was 3-9 in his final 12 games against Power 5 opponents, and he was 5-9 in his final 14 games overall. And he almost lost to an FCS school, and had lost to Kentucky for the second time, and it was and got blown out by South Carolina. So that was the reason why it was time to let Dan Mullen go, because the trajectory of the program was in a downward spiral. So that's why they had to make the move. And I still stand by the program's decision to get rid of Dan Mullen because of how the program was going in its final dozen or so games at the program. The problem is that when you hire a head coach, you expect him to do better. And Napier, quite frankly, hasn't done much better. So here it is, his first record at Florida, 2022, 3-5 in conference play. And if you evaluate here, had a great win against a top 10 Utah team, but then fell off the very next week by losing to Kentucky in a game that Florida could have won. They had an embarrassing performance against South Florida, which they quite frankly should have lost. Went on the road and gave Tennessee a run for their money, but some of Napier's decision making that game, going for 2-point conversions unnecessarily, not kicking a field goal inside deep inside Tennessee's territory at the beginning of the game, it kind of it's what came back and bite them. Then they lose to LSU and Georgia, which I kind of expected because they were better football teams. But then it seemed like the team was starting to right the ship, so to speak, because they go on the road and get a much-needed victory against Texas A&M. Then they blow out South Carolina in a game which they blew out South Carolina worse than what South Carolina did to Florida in 2021. South Carolina blew out Florida 40-17 in 2021, which is a 23-point margin. Here, Florida blew them out 38-6, which is a 32-point margin. So not only did they get revenge on South Carolina, they beat them worse than what Florida did the previous year. Then that's when the downhill spiral started. They lose to Vanderbilt, which is never acceptable. Then they're on the road against a 16th ranked Florida State team, which I thought they were a little bit higher. I thought they were ranked a little bit higher than that. They were on the road at a 16th ranked Florida State team, and they were up 24-21 at halftime. And you're thinking, wait, they have a chance to actually win the game. But Napier in the third quarter doesn't run the ball a single time when running the ball was what got him the lead in this game in the first place. Went away from the run, bad play calling, which is now the theme of Billy Napier as a play caller, at least for the moment, until he makes a change at offensive coordinator and play caller. You know, I'll believe it when I see it. But then he loses that one, and that would have made up for the Vanderbilt loss, in my opinion, going on the road and beating Florida State when they had all this momentum on the road, and that would have been better than the victory against Utah, in my opinion. And then obviously you have the infamous blowout versus Oregon State, in which I knew Florida wasn't going to win because they had a lot of players opting out for the transfer portal or for the draft, but there's still no excuse to lose 30-3. And Jack Miller in this game was flat out terrible. Then you go to 2023. Sorry, I thought I heard something. You go to 2023. This year, we still have 3 games left. 3-3 in conference record play, and quite frankly, it looks like it's about to be another 3-5 record in conference play. 5-4, which looks like it's going to be worse than what his record was last year. Then you have these games right here. They lose in pitiful fashion to Utah, in which you knew Utah was the better team, but the mistakes that the freshmen were making on special teams and on defense and on offense in all 3 phases of the game. I mean, Florida looked like they weren't prepared to play at all, which is embarrassing because you had that entire offseason to get ready for Utah, and that was the best you performed. Then they string together 3 wins. They get a big win against Tennessee in primetime action. They get blown out by Kentucky in the way that they did when it looked like Florida was starting to get things together. They get their revenge against Vanderbilt for last year. They escape William Bryce Stadium in Columbia, South Carolina, with a road victory by the skin of their teeth. It looked like, hey, maybe there's a chance that Florida maybe could do better than what they did last year, 5-2 heading into the bye week. The very next game was against Georgia. Now, I knew Florida would lose to Georgia. I didn't expect them to beat Georgia. I would have liked it for it to happen, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. And they get blown out. But okay, fine. I knew the Georgia game, they didn't really have much of a chance. But then you had this recent game right here against Arkansas, in which I've already talked about in the previous video, the stupid decisions that Billy Napier made that cost Florida this game and probably cost Florida a chance to make a bowl game this year. I mean, nothing's impossible, I would say. You know, look at their final 3 games: 13th ranked LSU, 14th ranked Missouri, and 4th ranked Florida State. I mean, the only silver lining of these final 3 games is that you get Florida State at home, and that's quite frankly about it. Now, maybe Florida can go on the road and maybe pull a road win against LSU, Missouri, or something like that. I don't think they have any chance of beating Florida State. I don't think they have any chance of beating LSU, especially now that you find out that the LSU game will be at 7:30. I don't know if it'll be on ESPN or SEC Network. I'm gonna have to look that part up. It'll probably be on ESPN because ESPN loves to broadcast Florida and LSU games because it is a rivalry between those two. I mean, but anyways, quite frankly, if Florida goes 1-2 in this stretch, they'll certainly beat my expectations because I don't have them winning a single game after they lost to Arkansas. And I said it in my pregame coverage of Arkansas that if they can't beat Arkansas, I don't expect them to beat these other 3 teams. So that's really where it is right now with Florida. So there it is. That's the video. I don't have. This is what happened right now if Florida were to fire him. So look at these numbers right here: 25.67 after 2024 and 19.38 million after 2025. Whether we as Florida fans like it or not, Billy Napier is probably going to be coaching Florida in 2024 and 2025. Whether or not he's going to be coaching Florida in 2026, that will remain to be seen. But Florida is definitely going to let him finish off this year, next year, and the year after, just so they don't have to pay so much money in the buyout that they can give towards a new head coach when they if they choose to hire one. But whether Florida fans like it or not, and I damn sure don't like it, we're stuck with Billy Napier for the rest of this year and the next 2 seasons afterwards. So sobering reality.